They said it was a gift. 50 warriors on my doorstep, their faces painted for a ceremony I didn't understand. They sat on their horses in perfect silence, a living wall between my small cabin and the world I knew. At their head was an old man on a white horse, his eyes holding the history of 1,000 battles. The people of Riverton, my people, were hiding behind their doors, rifles in their hands. The town sheriff stood halfway between them and me, his face pale, his hands shaking near the pistol on his hip. "Miss Mitchell," he called out, his voice thin against the vast silence. "Get back inside. Now." But I couldn't, because I knew why they were here. I knew the secret I had been keeping for 4 long days. They said this was a gift, a thank you. But I knew this wasn't just a gift. It was a test, a declaration. And in the heart of that Wyoming territory in the summer of 1891, it was the beginning of the end. Or maybe it was the end of the beginning. The old man on the white horse raised a hand, not in violence but in greeting. He dismounted with the grace of a man half his age, and his eyes, black and piercing, found mine across the dusty ground. He started walking toward me. Each step was a drumbeat, counting down the last few seconds of my old life. And it all started 4 days ago, with a splash in the Missouri River. The river was my escape. Back in Boston, life was a cage of corsets and polite conversation. Out here, teaching the children of settlers in a one-room schoolhouse, the world felt bigger, real. That morning, with school out for the summer, I'd walked farther down the riverbank than ever before, a book of poetry in my basket and a feeling of freedom in my heart. The sun was high and hot. I found a spot under an old cottonwood, the water sliding past like a silver snake. I must have been reading for an hour when I heard it, a splash too loud for a fish. I looked up, shading my eyes. Nothing. I was about to look down again when I saw it. Movement. A frantic churning in the water, about 30 yards from shore. Arms flailing, a head bobbing, then disappearing. A child. My mind didn't even have time to think. The book fell from my hands. My shoes were kicked off as I ran to the water's edge. My cotton dress, so light and free a moment ago, became a lead weight the second I hit the water. The riverbed was slick with mud. Then it just vanished. I was swimming, the current pulling at me, a cold, insistent hand trying to drag me downstream. The boy was small, maybe 8 or 9. His head went under again, and this time it didn't come back up. Panic, cold and sharp, shot through me. I took a breath and dove, my eyes open in the murky brown water. My hands reached out, grasping at nothing but the liquid darkness. Then my fingers brushed against fabric. I locked my hand onto it and pulled. We broke the surface together. I gasped for air, dragging the boy's limp body into the crook of my arm. He was a Native American child. His long black hair was plastered to his still face. His copper skin was cold. His eyes were closed. He wasn't breathing. The shore seemed a mile away. My arms were screaming. My legs were lead. The river wanted us both. It pulled and swirled, trying to spin us back out into the deep channel. Just as I felt my last bit of strength give way, my foot hit something solid. The riverbed. I had made it to the shallows. With a final, desperate heave, I dragged the unconscious child onto the grassy bank and collapsed beside him. Water streamed from his mouth, but he was still. Lifeless. My father was a doctor. I had read his medical books. I remembered a chapter on drowning. I rolled him onto his back, tilted his head, and pressed down hard on his small chest. Once. Twice. "Breathe," I whispered, my voice a raw, trembling thing. "Please breathe." On the third press, he coughed, a violent, racking cough that brought up a flood of river water. His eyes fluttered open, dark, confused, and then terrified. He scrambled away from me, a small, wounded animal. "It's all right," I said softly, keeping my distance. "You're safe." He said something in a language I didn't know. Lakota, I guessed. He was shivering. I took the shawl I'd laid on the grass and offered it to him. He hesitated, his dark eyes watching me, trying to figure out what kind of creature I was. Then he took it, wrapping the wool around his thin shoulders. I pointed to my chest. Sarah. He understood. He pointed to his own small chest. Little Eagle, he said. He looked around, suddenly remembering something, and pointed upstream, speaking rapidly. Your family? I guessed. He nodded. I gathered my things, my forgotten book now swollen and warped, and took his small, cold hand. We walked. 15 minutes later, we heard a call. Little Eagle's face lit up. He shouted back. Two figures appeared, running along the riverbank. A woman and a teenage boy. The woman fell to her knees and hugged Little Eagle, her words a torrent of what sounded like prayer and scolding all at once. The teenage boy, maybe 16 or 17, stood back, his eyes wary, suspicious. He looked at my wet clothes, at Little Eagle wrapped in my shawl, and then at me. Little Eagle spoke, pointing at me, then at the river. The woman, his mother, looked up. Her face was strong, kind, lined by the sun and by worry. She rose and came to me, taking both my hands in hers. Pila mai, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you. The teenage boy stepped forward. My mother says you saved my brother from the great water spirit, he said, his English careful and accented. He cannot swim. I'm Sarah Mitchell, I said, relieved to have a translator. I teach at the school in Riverton. I am Swift Fox. This is my mother, Watiwi. He translated for her and she spoke again, her expression solemn. My mother says we owe you a life debt, Swift Fox said. Little Eagle is the grandson of our chief, Rising Sun. Our family will never forget what you have done. Please, I said, embarrassed. Anyone would have done the same. Wadawi shook her head firmly after Swift Fox translated. She says not anyone would risk themselves for a Lakota child, Swift Fox said, his voice dropping. Many white people would have watched him drown. The words hit me like a stone, because I knew deep down he was right. The thought was monstrous, but the reality of the tensions in this territory was undeniable. Wadawi took a small leather pouch from around her neck. It is a medicine pouch, Swift Fox explained. For protection. She says it will keep you safe, as you kept her son safe. I accepted the gift, deeply moved, and placed the cord around my neck. The leather was still warm from her skin. They offered to walk me home. As we walked, Swift Fox and I talked. He told me they were from a summer hunting camp nearby. He asked me why I had come west. Freedom, I suppose, I told him. A chance to be useful. Freedom, he repeated, a sad smile touching his lips. My people understand this word very well. As we neared Riverton, Wadawi stopped. My mother says it is better if we do not enter your town, Swift Fox translated. Some people there do not welcome us. I understood. Their presence could cause trouble, trouble that would fall hardest on them. My grandfather, Rising Sun, will wish to thank you himself, Swift Fox said as they prepared to leave. He will come. It's not necessary, I began, but Wadawi interrupted, speaking directly to me, her eyes intense. She says to keep this close, Swift Fox translated, pointing to the medicine pouch. And she says that we will meet again, but she fears it will be in sorrow. With those unsettling words, they were gone, melting into the dusk along the river. I stood there, a hand on the small pouch, the weight of her premonition settling over me like a shroud. She was right. We would meet again. I just never could have imagined how. 4 days later, I was washing my breakfast dishes when I heard the hoofbeats. Not the familiar clop of a farmer's wagon, but something else. The sound of many horses moving as one. I stepped onto my porch and my breath caught in my throat. 50 warriors, riding in perfect formation across the plains, straight for my cabin. Their horses were painted with symbols, their shields and lances decorated with eagle feathers. The town of Riverton exploded in panic. Shouts, slamming doors, the frantic ringing of the emergency bell. And at their head, on a magnificent white horse, rode an old man whose face seemed carved from the very rock of the plains. Rising Sun, he had come. Sheriff Wallace ran out of his office, rifle in hand, followed by a dozen other armed men. They were terrified. I felt a surge of panic myself. A single gunshot, a single misunderstanding, and this field would be soaked in blood. Before I even knew what I was doing, I stepped off my porch. I walked out into the open ground, placing myself between the Lakota procession and the terrified town. My heart was a hammer against my ribs, but I kept walking. "Miss Mitchell, get back here right now!" Sheriff Wallace yelled. I ignored him. I stopped in the middle of the no-man's land and turned to face the riders. The old chief, Rising Sun, regarded me with those piercing black eyes. He gave a slight nod, then dismounted. Swift Fox appeared from behind him, ready to translate. "My grandfather, Chief Rising Sun of the Miniconjou Lakota, wishes to speak with the woman called Sarah Mitchell," Swift Fox announced, his voice clear and strong. Sheriff Wallace strode forward. "This is private property," he blustered. "I'm going to have to ask you to turn around and head back to the reservation." Rising Sun listened to the translation, his expression unchanging. He spoke, his voice deep and resonant. "My grandfather says we have not come to make trouble," Swift Fox translated. "We have come to honor a debt." "It's all right, Sheriff," I said, finding my voice. "4 days ago, I pulled his grandson from the river. They mean no harm." Wallace stared at me, his face a mask of disbelief. "You helped them, and you didn't think to mention it." "I helped a drowning child," I said evenly. "That's all that matters." Rising Sun walked toward me. Up close, his face was a map of a long and difficult life. He raised his hand in greeting. "How, Sarah Mitchell?" he said. He then began to speak in Lakota, his words formal and measured. "My grandfather says that among our people, there is no greater act than saving a child's life," Swift Fox translated when he had finished. "When that act comes from someone not of our blood, it carries even more significance. He has come today to honor you." He gestured. 2 warriors brought forward a painted pony, a beautiful mare with a finely crafted saddle. "This is Storm Dancer," Swift Fox said. "She is one of my grandfather's finest horses. He offers her to you." I was stunned. A horse like this was a fortune. I couldn't possibly." Rising Sun held up a hand, cutting me off. "My grandfather says that to refuse would be to dishonor both him and the act that brought us here," Swift Fox said firmly. "Storm Dancer is yours." I had no choice. I nodded my acceptance. "Please tell him I accept with a grateful heart." A slight smile touched the old chief's lips. He then turned, addressing not just me, but the whole town. His voice boomed across the field. "4 days ago," the translation came from Swift Fox, "this woman did what many others would not. She saw not a Lakota child, but simply a child in danger. She entered the water and fought the current to bring my grandson safely to shore." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the armed settlers. "There has been much blood between our peoples, much sorrow. But today I am reminded that even in these dark times, there can be light. One person choosing to see beyond the differences that divide us." He turned back to me. "From this day forward, you will be known among my people as Maniwakoni, water of life. You are welcome in our camps. No Lakota will ever raise a hand against you." He then took a necklace from his own neck, an intricate piece of porcupine quills, and a polished buffalo horn pendant. He placed it over my head. "This has been worn by the chiefs of my family for 4 generations," Swift Fox translated, his voice filled with awe. "It carries the protection of our ancestors." I was speechless, overwhelmed. The weight of the necklace was nothing compared to the weight of the honor. As the Lakota prepared to leave, I saw the faces of the townspeople. Their fear had curdled into something else, something cold and hard. Anger, resentment. As Rising Sun's warriors rode away, their disciplined formation a stark contrast to the ragged line of armed settlers, a man stepped out from the crowd. Jacob Miller, the owner of the general store, and, more importantly, the chairman of the school board. His face was flushed with rage. He waited until the last of the Lakota had disappeared over the rise. Then he walked right up to me, his eyes blazing. He didn't speak to me. He spoke to Sheriff Wallace, but his words were meant for me. "That was a disgusting spectacle," he spat. "They were just thanking her, Jacob," the sheriff said uneasily. Miller laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. He finally turned to me. "Thanking you? They were marking you, claiming you. Don't you see? You've chosen a side, Miss Mitchell." He pointed a trembling finger at the necklace. "My own brother was killed at the Little Bighorn, by savages wearing trinkets just like that one. You've sided with my brother's murderers." "I sided with a child who was drowning," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "You've brought a curse on this town," he snarled, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "You think this is over? This is just the beginning." He leaned in closer, his breath hot and sour. "This town has a long memory, Miss Mitchell, and so does the U.S. Army." He turned and stalked away. The other townspeople wouldn't meet my eyes. They melted back into their houses, leaving me alone in the field with my new horse and the chief's necklace hanging like a millstone around my neck. Watiwi's words came back to me, cold and clear. "I fear it will be in sorrow. The sorrow had just begun." That night, the town of Riverton showed its true colors. I was sitting in my cabin, trying to write in my journal, trying to make sense of the day, when a rock crashed through my window, showering the floor with glass. I jumped up, my heart racing. Wrapped around the rock was a piece of paper. The words were scrawled in crude, angry letters. "Indian lover. Get out." I stood there trembling, the note clutched in my hand. They weren't just angry. They hated me, and they wanted me gone. I was cleaning up the glass when I heard a soft tapping at the back door. I grabbed a fireplace poker, my hands slick with sweat. "Who's there?" I called out. "Sarah, it's me, Swift Fox." I cautiously opened the door. He slipped inside and my breath caught in my throat. He was bleeding from a nasty gash on the side of his head. A dark bruise was already forming on his cheek. "What happened to you?" I whispered, rushing to get a cloth and water. "Miller and two of his friends," he said, wincing as I cleaned the wound. "I followed them after they left your cabin. They went to the telegraph office." My blood ran cold. "The telegraph?" "They sent a wire to Fort Robinson," he said, his voice grim. "They lied, Sarah. They told the army that you had been kidnapped, that the 50 warriors weren't a gift. They were a war party. They said Rising Sun's honor was a declaration of war on the town." I sank into a chair, the room spinning. It was worse than I could have ever imagined. They hadn't just threatened my job. They had painted me as a hostage, and the Lakota as hostiles. They were intentionally trying to start a war. "The army will come," I said, the words tasting like ash. "They'll come looking for a fight." "They are already on their way," Swift Fox said. "I heard the telegraph operator talking. A cavalry patrol is riding out at first light. They think they're coming to rescue a kidnapped white woman." He looked at me, his young face suddenly old and weary. "They won't ask questions, Sarah. They will see my people and they will start shooting. What happened at Wounded Knee, it will happen again. Because of you." The weight of his words crushed me. Because of me. Because I saved a child. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "We have to leave," he said, standing up. "Tonight. Now. My grandfather sent me to bring you to our camp. It's the only way. If the army finds you here, they'll believe Miller's story. But if you're gone, it will confuse them. It might buy us time." He went to the window, peering out into the darkness. "Miller and his friends are watching your cabin. They're making sure you don't leave. They want you here when the soldiers arrive to play the part of the terrified victim." He turned back to me, a fierce light in his eyes. "We won't give them what they want." I looked around my small cabin, my books, my neat little desk, the life I had so carefully built for myself. It was all about to be swept away. I packed a small bag, my hands shaking so badly I could barely tie the straps. My journal, a change of clothes, the small Bible my father had given me. As I packed, a thought, cold and sharp, cut through my fear. "Swift Fox," I said, "how did you get away from Miller?" He touched the cut on his head. "They were not expecting me to fight back," he said with a grim smile, "but they will be looking for me." "No," I said, understanding dawning. "They're not just watching the cabin, they're hunting for you." Just then we heard it, the baying of hounds in the distance. They weren't just watching, they had formed a posse, and they were hunting him down like an animal. "We have to go," he said, grabbing my arm. "Through the back, Storm Dancer is hidden in the trees by the river." We slipped out into the night, the barking of the dogs growing closer. We ran. My lungs burned, my legs ached. The branches of the trees clawed at my face and clothes. Behind us, we could see the bobbing lights of lanterns as the posse fanned out, their shouts echoing through the darkness. This wasn't an escape. It was a flight for our lives. The ride was a frantic, desperate blur. We didn't follow a path. We followed the river, letting the sound of the water cover the sound of our horses' hooves. Storm Dancer moved like a shadow, swift and silent, her powerful muscles eating up the miles. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, sent a jolt of fear through me. I kept looking back, expecting to see the lights of Miller's posse, expecting to hear the thunder of the cavalry. Just before dawn, we saw the fires, a hidden encampment in a valley shielded by bluffs. Swift Fox let out a low whistle, and an answer came back from the darkness. We were safe. For now. The camp was already in a state of controlled chaos. People were packing, dismantling teepees, loading horses. The news of the cavalry had arrived before us. There was no panic, just a grim, efficient urgency. Rising Sun met us at the edge of the camp. His face was grave. He listened as Swift Fox quickly recounted what had happened. The telegraph, the lies, the posse. The old chief placed a hand on my shoulder. His touch was steady, reassuring. He spoke to Swift Fox, his voice low and serious. My grandfather says the web has grown more tangled than he feared, Swift Fox translated. Miller's hatred has given the soldiers the excuse they need. They will not stop until they find a reason for blood. Rising Sun gave a series of quiet commands. The camp's movements quickened. He turned back to me. We cannot travel together as a large band, Swift Fox translated his words. We are too easy to track. We will split into smaller family groups and meet in 2 weeks at a sacred place in the hills, a place the white man does not know. He looked at me, his dark eyes seeming to see right into my soul. You have brought this trouble to our door, Maniwikoni, not by your choice, but by your actions. Our fate is now tied to yours. My son, Two Bears, will take you with his family. He is our best scout. If anyone can keep you safe, it is him. Two Bears, a quiet, powerful man who was Swift Fox's father, stepped forward. He nodded to me, his expression unreadable but not unkind. Watiwi and Little Eagle were with him, their belongings already packed. An old woman, her face a beautiful mask of wrinkles, stood beside them. This is my grandmother, Mia, Swift Fox said. She is a wise woman. As we prepared to leave with Two Bears' family, a scout who had been watching the back trail rode into camp, his horse lathered in sweat. He spoke rapidly to Rising Sun. A new expression crossed the chief's face, one of deep concern. What is it? I asked Swift Fox. The posse, he said, his voice tight. They did not give up. They are still tracking us. And their leader, it is Miller himself. Two Bears looked out at the pre-dawn landscape. His eyes narrowed. My father says this Miller is no simple storekeeper, Swift Fox translated. The scout says he moves and reads signs like a man who has done this before. He was an army scout. He knows this land. He knows how our people think. The chill that went through me had nothing to do with the morning air. We weren't just being chased by a mob. We were being hunted by an expert. Two Bears looked back at the trail, a grim understanding on his face. He spoke one word in English for my benefit. Hunter. We rode hard all day, pushing west into the rugged, broken country of the Badlands. Two Bears led us with an unnerving confidence, choosing paths that seemed invisible to me. He never looked back, but I knew he was aware of the hunter behind us, a ghost on our trail. The world was a blur of rock and sky. We spoke little, saving our energy, saving our breath. The family moved as one unit. Watwi and Mia rode with an endurance that amazed me. Little Eagle, riding with his mother, was silent and watchful, his childhood stripped away by the harsh reality of the chase. Late in the afternoon, we crested a high ridge. Two Bears dismounted and crawled to the edge, peering down at the plains below. He was still for a long time. When he came back, his face was a mask of stone. Soldiers, Swift Fox translated his father's report. A patrol of 20 men. They are blocking the way west. He pointed to the south. And Miller's posse is 2 hours behind us. We are caught between them. We were trapped. A wall of blue-coated soldiers ahead, a relentless hunter behind. Two bears looked at the sky. Dark clouds were gathering on the horizon. A storm was coming. He looked at the valley below, a wide open stretch of grassland we would have to cross to reach the safety of the northern hills. Then he looked at us, his family, and me. A decision formed in his eyes. He began speaking to Swift Fox, his voice low and urgent, giving a series of instructions. "What is he saying?" I asked. Swift Fox's face was pale. "He is going to lead them away," he said, his voice cracking. "Both of them, the soldiers and the posse. He will create a false trail, lead them south into the heart of the Badlands. He is going to be a decoy." "No," I said, looking at Watawi, whose face was filled with a terrible, silent understanding. "It's too dangerous." "It is the only way," Swift Fox said. "He says you must take the family and cross the valley when the storm hits. The rain will cover your tracks. You must ride for the place called Bear's Lodge. He will meet us there, if he can." Before I could argue, Two Bears was moving. He took two of their pack horses and began creating a clear, obvious trail leading away from the ridge. He worked quickly, breaking branches, scuffing the earth, making it look like a large group had passed in a hurry. He came back to his family. He placed a hand on Little Eagle's head. He looked at Watawi, and in that one look, a lifetime of love and partnership passed between them. He clasped Swift Fox's shoulder. "You are the man of the family now," he said in Lakota. "Protect them." Then he turned to me. "Manny Wakoni," he said, speaking my Lakota name. He pointed to the valley. "Go." He swung onto his horse and, leading the two pack animals, rode out into the open, a clear and tempting target. He didn't look back. He rode south toward the jaws of the trap, drawing the hunters away from us. We watched from the ridge as Miller's posse appeared, saw the fresh trail, and followed without hesitation. Moments later, the Army patrol, spotting the movement, also gave chase. We watched as they all disappeared into the maze of canyons to the south. Two Bears had saved us, but he had ridden into a death trap. The storm broke with a fury. The sky opened up, and rain came down in a blinding sheet. "Now!" Swift Fox yelled. "We must cross now!" We urged our horses down the slick slope and out into the open valley. The world was a gray blur of rain and wind. Lightning split the sky, followed by crashes of thunder that sounded like cannon fire. Storm Dancer ran with the heart of a warrior, her hooves churning the mud. We were exposed, alone. A tiny, desperate family led by a 16-year-old boy, riding into the heart of a storm, praying that the man who had just sacrificed himself for us would somehow, impossibly, survive. We made it across the valley. The hills on the other side offered the shelter of pine trees, but no comfort. We were soaked, freezing, and heartsick. Two Bears was gone. Swift Fox, now burdened with the role of leader, found us a small overhang where we could escape the worst of the rain. The weight of what his father had done was heavy on his young shoulders. He tried to be strong, but I could see the fear in his eyes. Watiwi was a pillar of quiet strength, comforting Little Eagle, but her gaze kept drifting south, back toward the Badlands where her husband had vanished. We rode for another day, the landscape growing wilder, more dramatic. We were heading for a place the Lakota called Bear's Lodge, a sacred site the white men called Devil's Tower. Two Bears had told us to meet him there. It was a prayer more than a plan. We were navigating a narrow canyon, the walls rising like giants on either side, when Swift Fox pulled his horse to a sudden halt. He pointed to the muddy trail ahead. Hoof prints, unshod ponies, not soldiers, and they were fresh. "Father?" Watawi whispered in Lakota, a flicker of hope in her eyes. Swift Fox shook his head. "Too many, 6, maybe 7 riders." A sense of dread washed over me. We weren't alone in these hills. We moved forward with caution, every sense on high alert. The canyon twisted and turned. Around a sharp bend, it opened into a small basin. And they were there, waiting for us. 7 riders blocking the path. Their faces were painted with black and red stripes, symbols of war. They were Lakota, but they had a different look about them, a wild, desperate energy. Their leader, a big man with a scarred face and a necklace of bear claws, urged his horse forward. He spoke in Lakota, his tone not a greeting, but a challenge. Swift Fox answered, his voice steady. "Who are they?" I whispered. Wadwi answered in a low, fearful voice. "Ghost dancers." I had heard of the ghost dance, a messianic movement that had swept through the tribes. They believed a sacred dance would bring back the buffalo and make the white man disappear. The army considered them dangerous fanatics, the leader's eyes fixed on me, on my white skin, on the chief's necklace still around my neck. He sneered and spoke again. "He wants to know why we travel with a white woman." Swift Fox translated, his voice tight. "He is Red Hawk. He and his band have broken from the reservation. They follow their own law." The conversation grew heated. Red Hawk's men began to edge their horses closer, surrounding us. "He does not believe you are a friend," Swift Fox said grimly. "He thinks you are a spy. He says we must come with them to their camp. He will decide what to do with us there." We had no choice. They were 7 armed warriors. We were a boy, 3 women, and a child. They took our reins and led us away, deeper into the canyon. Their camp was hidden in a secret valley, a collection of crude shelters that spoke of a hard, desperate life. As we were led into the center, a warrior shouted from the edge of the camp. They had another captive. They dragged him forward, beaten, bruised, his hands bound. It was 2 bears. Watiwi cried out his name. Red Hawk laughed, a triumphant, ugly sound. He had captured the son of the great chief Rising Sun. He walked up to me and ripped the buffalo horn necklace from my neck. "My uncle Rising Sun grows weak in his old age." Red Hawk spat, his English broken but clear. "He gives the treasures of our ancestors to a white snake." So he held the necklace up for his followers to see. "I will show our people the true path to strength. We will cleanse this land, starting with her." He pointed at me. His followers let out a hungry, howling cheer. They threw us into a makeshift pen like animals. 2 bears was thrown in with us. Red Hawk stood over us, his face a mask of hatred. "Tonight the spirits will dance," he sneered, "and at sunrise they will have a sacrifice." The night was a nightmare. We were huddled together in the crude shelter, the beat of a single drum echoing through the valley. In the center of the camp, Red Hawk and his followers began the ghost dance. They danced around a huge bonfire, their painted bodies twisting and turning, their voices rising in a hypnotic, terrifying chant. They were working themselves into a frenzy. "He is using us," 2 bears said, his voice a low growl. His son translated, "He is using my father's name and his hatred for your people to build his own power." "What will happen?" I asked, my voice trembling. "He will hold a council," 2 bears said. "He will demand your death. He will say that sacrificing a white woman will give their dance the power to fulfill the prophecy." The dance reached its climax. Warriors fell to the ground, shaking and speaking in tongues. They believed they were talking to the spirits. Finally, Red Hawk stopped the dance. He gestured to our pen. The guards dragged us out and forced us to sit before the council fire. Red Hawk began his speech. It was a tirade of hate and blame. He pointed at me, accusing me of being the source of all their suffering. He held up Rising Sun's necklace and spat on it. He worked the crowd into a mob, their eyes glowing with a fanatical light in the fire's glare. Then 2 bears, despite his bonds, rose to speak. He spoke with the quiet dignity of his father. He did not shout. He spoke of wisdom, of honor, of the true path of the Lakota. He reminded them that hatred only bred more suffering. Some of the older warriors listened, their expressions thoughtful. Red Hawk's power depended on rage, and 2 bears was dousing it with reason. Red Hawk, seeing he was losing some of the crowd, grew even more furious. He shouted 2 bears down, calling him a traitor, a white man's pet. The crowd began to sway back to him. It was hopeless. The hatred was too strong. Then a figure rose from our small captive group. Mia, the old grandmother. She walked slowly, painfully into the center of the circle. A hush fell over the entire camp. Even Red Hawk was silent. In this place of rage and violence, her age and her clear spiritual power commanded an absolute, unwilling respect. She began to speak, her voice surprisingly strong, cutting through the night air. She did not plead. She did not argue. She commanded. She is telling them of a vision, Swift Fox whispered, his voice filled with awe. Mia pointed a thin, trembling finger at Red Hawk. I held you when you were born, son of my sister, she said, her voice ringing with authority. I saw the fear in your heart then, and I see it now. You wrap yourself in rage and call it power, but it is a child's blanket against the dark. She then told them her vision. It was a masterpiece of psychological warfare. She described a future, not of victory, but of death. She said she saw soldiers coming, not because of me, but because of Red Hawk's arrogance. She named the warriors who would be the first to die. She described Red Hawk, not dying a hero's death, but being captured, taken to Fort Robinson, and hanged like a common horse thief. She made his future shameful, pathetic. Then she turned to me. She walked over and placed her ancient, withered hand on my head. This woman carries the spirit of the river, Mia declared, her voice echoing in the stunned silence. Mani Wikoni, water of life. The spirits themselves brought her to save the grandson of our chief. To spill her blood is to poison the water, to curse our children and our children's children. I, Mia, medicine woman of the Miniconju, have spoken. The spirits have shown me the true path. His, she said, pointing a dismissive finger at Red Hawk, is the path to the grave. She turned and walked slowly back to us. The silence that followed was absolute. Red Hawk's authority had been shattered. His followers looked from him to the old woman, their fanaticism replaced by doubt and fear. An older warrior, a man named Grey Wolf, stood up. He had the respect of the others. He spoke briefly, his voice calm and reasonable. He proposed a vote. Should they follow the path of the medicine woman or the path of the warrior who promised them a magic that now seemed like a lie? One by one, they called out their choice. The tide had turned. Mia's words, her spiritual power, had saved us. Red Hawk stood there, his face a mask of pure, undiluted rage. He had been publicly humiliated, defeated not by a warrior, but by an old woman's words. He turned and stormed away into the darkness, a snake slithering back into its hole. Grey Wolf approached us. You will be freed at dawn, Swift Fox translated. You must leave and never speak of this camp. What about Red Hawk? Two Bears asked. Grey Wolf's expression was grim. His pride is a wounded animal. Such creatures are always the most dangerous. At dawn, they gave us back our horses and supplies. Red Hawk was nowhere to be seen. Grey Wolf and a few other warriors escorted us to the edge of their territory. Be careful, Grey Wolf warned as we parted ways. A snake that has been stepped on will still try to bite. We rode hard, putting as much distance as we could between us and that valley of hate. We were just clearing the mouth of a long canyon when the shot rang out, a rifle crack echoing off the rock walls. The bullet sang past Two Bear's head, close enough to tear a hole in his buckskin shirt. We didn't have to look. We knew who it was. Red Hawk, hidden in the rocks above, making one last desperate attempt at revenge. We didn't wait for a second shot. We galloped, pushing our horses to their limits, not stopping until the canyon was far behind us and we were out on the open plains again. We had escaped, but the echo of that gunshot was a reminder of how close we had come to death and how thin the line was between reason and madness in this hard, unforgiving land. 2 days later, we saw them, the camp of Rising Sun's people, nestled in the Valley of the Three Eagles. The reunion was a flood of relief and emotion. The story of our capture, of Mia's courage, of Red Hawk's treachery was told around the council fire that night. Rising Sun listened, his face grim. My sister's son has chosen the path of shadows, he declared. He has brought dishonor to his name. From this day, he is no longer Lakota. He is an enemy to our people. In the weeks that followed, I lived with them. I learned their language, their customs, their stories. I was no longer an outsider. I was Mani Wikoni. But news eventually came that the soldiers had given up their search and returned to Fort Robinson. The immediate danger had passed. I had a choice to make. Stay with the people who had become my family or return to my own world. I have to go back, I told Swift Fox one evening, as we watched the sun set from a high bluff. I cannot hide here forever. Red Hawk's hatred exists because of fear and misunderstanding. The lies Miller told are believed because my people don't know your people. Someone has to be a bridge. You have become Maniwikoni in truth, he said quietly, flowing between two worlds. The day I left, the whole camp came to see me off. Little Eagle gave me a tiny horse he had carved from a piece of wood. A small storm dancer, he said, so you remember to visit. Wadawi gave me a new dress, beautifully decorated with beadwork. Two bears gave me a fine knife. For your protection on the new trail, he said. Rising Sun came to me last. He handed me a folded piece of paper. One of our people who was taught at the mission schools has written down my words, Swift Fox translated. It is a testimony, the true story of what happened, a weapon for you to use in your world of paper and lies. I took the letter, a piece of irrefutable truth in a world built on deception. I was no longer a fugitive. I was an emissary. I mounted Storm Dancer. Rising Sun placed a hand on my leg. The path between our peoples is long and difficult, he said, but those who walk it with an open heart make it safer for all who follow. Go, Maniwikoni, be the water that flows between the rocks, that softens the sharpest edges. Tell our story. I rode away with the sunrise at my back. I didn't know if I could change the world. I didn't know if one voice could shout down a century of hatred and fear. But as Storm Dancer carried me east, toward the town of Fort Pierre, toward a new beginning, I knew I had to try. The river had taken a boy and almost kept him. But in giving him back, it had given me a purpose, a new name, a new life, a current that was just beginning to flow. If you were moved by Sarah's incredible journey and believe that one person's courage can build a bridge, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. We publish stories of unbelievable resilience and unexpected heroes every single week, and if you turn on notifications, you'll be the first to know when the next one drops. Trust me, you won't want to miss it.